but I'll begin with the three words with which I will end. Remember, enlighten, and inspire. I think it's incredibly important that we remember our history, remember our past. As I go through the great museums here in our nation's capital, I notice that there are stories missing stories like those of my ancestors and many of us here today. You know, my mom never learned to read or write, but her son is here today trying to play a small part in creating this important museum. And there are missing pages in our history books. We know, for example, that conventional wisdom tells us that the first permanent European settlement in the United States was Jamestown, Virginia. The problem with that happened in 1607. We have to go back to 1493. We're talking about United States territory in Puerto Rico. 1565 in St. Augustine, Florida. We're talking about mainland United States. The history goes long before, so Latinos were already here saying bienvenidos. What took you so long when the British got to Jamestown? So, and as a veteran myself, I like to talk about our military history. We know that General Galvez, the Spanish general, helped stem the advance of the British from the South. Without his contributions, General Washington might not have won the Revolutionary War. In the Civil War, the first admiral of the United States Navy was David Farragut, more accurately pronounced David Farragut, whose biological father fought in the American Revolutionary War as a Spanish soldier. In the 20th century, among the 500,000 Hispanics serving in World War II was a Marine named Guy Gabaldon, a street kid from LA, who single-handedly captured over 1,500 Japanese soldiers. The U.S. Army's 65th Infantry Regiment of Puerto Rico, the Borinqueneers, was one of the most highly decorated combat units during the Korean conflict. Everett Alvarez was the first naval aviator shot down during Vietnam. He spent over 8.5 years as a prisoner of war. 60 Hispanics have earned our nation's Medal of Honor, and we've got young men and women Latinos fighting and dying for us in the battlefields of Afghanistan and Iraq. We take a backseat to no one in the defense of our country. And we've been there contributing in every walk of life, in business, in science, in the arts, etc. We've been there every step of the way, and those stories are missing by and large in our portfolio of museums. And don't take my word for it, in 1994, a report commissioned by the Smithsonian talked about how the Smithsonian was doing in terms of portraying those stories. That report was entitled Willful Neglect, which said that not only was the Smithsonian doing a poor job, it almost seemed as if they were doing it on purpose. So it's our time to change that. And contrary to what others might have you believe, Latinos are not a recent patch being sewn onto the tapestry of America. We are an essential thread woven into the very fabric of America. And now is the time to make this museum happen. It's also our time to enlighten the American public about this community, those contributions, but also the variety that exists within our community. We are Afro-Latinos, we are Asian Latinos, we are blonde-haired and blue-eyed, we are mestizos and mulattos, and every hybrid you can imagine. We are Republicans, we are Democrats, we're of Mexican descent, we're Cuban Americans, we're Puerto Ricans, our families came from Argentina and Colombia and El Salvador, etc. All I can say is the food court of this museum is going to be the best as well as I know. In spite of all of that diversity, there are some bedrock, foundational, fundamental values that bind us together. Things like family and faith and optimism. We care deeply about our families. It's our #1 priority. And we are people of faith, not just religious faith, but faith that tomorrow can be a better day. It's that optimism that if it's not better tomorrow for us, it might be for our kids. And those are the types of foundational values that we bring to the table and the contributions that we've made to every walk of life, because for over 500 years we've been relying on Latinos to fight our wars and to run our businesses, to tend our fields and mend our wounds, to teach our kids, patrol our streets, write our laws, and share the word of God. We are here to continue to contribute. We have 57 million people, almost 18% of the population. And America would not be what it is today without those contributions over the last half a millennium. So it is because of the complexity, the vastness, the importance of this community that we need a national museum with direct access to the collections, the reach, and the resources of the Smithsonian Institution. And it really should be on the National Mall so that visitors to our nation's capital can easily access that museum. Yeah. And lastly, inspire. We have an opportunity to inspire. You know, when our commission delivered our report, we had to choose a title. The title that we chose was to illuminate the American story for all, for the benefit of everyone. this is not of, by, and for Latinos. This is something that will help Latinos and non-Latinos Americans and those visiting our country trying to get a better understanding of who we are as a people. So that's the importance of this museum. This is a red, white, and blue patriotic initiative to describe our history in a better way so that we can talk about the greatness of this great country, the greatest nation that God has ever allowed man to create. And we know in the future generations, within a generation or so, Hispanics will be about 30% of the population. So by the year 2060, if you look to your left and you look to your right and they're not Latinos, guess what? It's probably you. But those future generations of Latinos need to feel acknowledged and recognized, invested and engaged, so that we can make sure that we can keep our nation vibrant and prosperous and strong and free. So my friends, I think it's important that we recognize that the time is now to begin a better telling of American history. The time is now to support this bill, and the time is now to begin creating this museum so that we can remember, enlighten, and inspire. Thank you all very much.
Right. Woo.